for me, is basically as the poet's walking casually through Palestine Street, he comes across the conflict that is occurring in Iraq. And this journey is a journey of self-discovery, how this country is in turmoil, and also beauty is contrasted with conflict, and how this particular place is being ruined and destroyed by the conflict that is occurring in this place.
I totally agree. I think that there's a repeated juxtaposition all the way through of extremely violent images and beautiful images. So we see the Golden Mosque is described as beautiful, vibrant image, and then later we find out there's blood on the walls. So everything's marred, everything's tainted by conflict. I think it's interesting as well that he never gives his opinion. He's purely an observer. It's up to us to look at these images and decide what to make of them and decide what the message is. I don't think it's deliberately
not telling.
Yeah, exactly.
I know looking down in the first, second, third, fourth stanza where it's got barbarian son, but the word barbarian is associated with conflict, and also that he suggests as well, going on in that line, no armistice, as if there's a sense of peace, that what he would like a sense of peace to occur possibly, but that clearly is not happening at the moment, so they cannot come to some kind of truth in this particular place.
It's almost like it's affected the actual nature around them. It's not just the people that it's affected. The sun's become barbaric. It's sort of infiltrated every aspect of the place in the society.
I think for me though, the fact that there's still such beauty described within it, and particularly when we get to the last stanza when there is no negativity in there, I think it's kind of the message for me saying that even though there's all this conflict, that goodness will prevail.
So a sense of hope.
Yeah, hope for the future.
Excellent. I think I definitely agree with that as well. We see the yellow palm appearing at the end, something that could perhaps represent nourishment, growth. It's the child that the fruit falls into his arms, so perhaps that's, like you were saying, hope for the future, the child being the future.
Yeah, well that links as well to the title as well. The yellow palm, we associate yellow with being a vibrant, a happy colour, and we associate when you shake someone's hand, you use your palm, so it's a sense of friendship, comradeship and a greeting.
Yeah, in fact when it says the date's sweeter than salams, salam being a welcoming greeting, so it does directly link.
Okay, so if we think about language, there's quite a lot of sort of juxtaposed images within this poem, sort of contrasting the good with the bad. So if we look at the first stanza, they're describing this funeral, which is quite a negative idea, but it's describing waving lilac stems and the coffin made of glass, which sounds quite fairy tale-like, really. And then that contrasts quite shockingly with the face of the man who breathed a poison gas. So we've got this fairy tale image contrasted with this poison gas at the end. And that's continued throughout the majority of the stanzas, where each one starts with quite a pleasant image, so the Golden Mosque, the blind beggars who seem quite gentle, and the river, and then they're contrasted with the negativity that sort of infiltrates into those positive images throughout the whole poem.
Yeah, we talked about in the message the Golden Mosque, obviously, represents religion, the richness of religion. It's a very vibrant image, and then the blood on the walls, and then again, like you said about the blind beggars, he presses into their hands the money, and then it's like you said, there's that shift, that juxtaposition, that shocking reference to their salutes were of the Imperial Guard, so that's the troops that guarded Saddam Hussein. So suddenly all these people around him have some association with conflict. In fact, they're beggars as well, again, shows that they've been perhaps let down as well.
I like the image in the penultimate stanza where it says a slow and silver caravan, and it's a slow and silver mile. It seems to slow the poem down. The author uses, poet uses sibilants. Silver you associate with being associated with money of some sort, being associated with precious, But in this case, it's used in a contrasting idea where it's associated with a cruise missile. And also it's associated with, it's on a journey and it's focused on getting to a certain place, and that journey is to hurt someone. And it's contrasts here with the beggar child who sees this as a beautiful image and who waves to it, ironically not realising that this particular missile could kill this child.
Could there be an alternative reading of the blessed it with a smile? Because I've always found that bit really confusing. I can't quite decide which one I agree with. On the one hand, I totally agree with the fact that it's ironic. He just sees it as something beautiful. He's completely innocent. On the other side, could it also be that the child is being sort of indoctrinated with the politics and the hatred of another country? And so he's sort of possibly making that blessing he wants. It shows that his innocence has been shattered, maybe. I don't know. I'm still in two minds about that. I can't make up my mind about which one it could be.
I think the child throughout this, so in the last stanza as well, it seems to be quite an innocent image. So I'm more inclined to think
that links with the last.
Yeah. And also as well, maybe this is something that's a regular occurrence, so it's used to seeing this particular missile that is bombarding this country, so it doesn't realise the importance of what's happening. Because its child is innocent, they are forced into this particular situation and don't realise that this could kill someone, kill the family, etc. And it shows the juxtaposition of innocence and hatred that are linked together.
So perhaps again, that if we're going with that interpretation, it would link to that idea of hope for the future. This child and the same child reached up to touch, then that would be
representing hope.
Yeah, exactly. There's lots of we're still talking about language. I think the whole thing, like we were saying before, is about this one person's experience. We are very much put into his position, but without making any judgments on what he sees. So there's loads of references to seeing, I watched, I heard in the second stanza.
So it's quite sensory then, isn't it?
Definitely.
So it makes you feel as if you are walking with the poet through Palestine Street and feeling all the things that he's feeling and the experiences that he's feeling. I like it is how he says on each line, as I made my way down Palestine Street, it's like it's a casual journey and it's not of importance, but then as you read further into the poem, then you realise that it is a very conflicted area.
Yeah.
Looking at the structure of the poem, I like how it rhymes, where it's got pass and glass and in the prayer and there. And you won't quite use this type of rhyme in this poem because it's got a serious message and it makes you question why the poet has used rhyme, because obviously it's something you wouldn't want to remember the conflict and the trauma of what was happening in this particular society.
I think possibly, as I was saying earlier about the sort of almost fairy tale-like description of some of those things, sort of links almost like a childlike approach to this, to writing the structure of this poem in terms of its rhyme as well, which might be reflecting the hope for the future with the child at the end of the poem.
Could it also, this sort of juxtaposition of the rhyme scheme and the content, could that again just be reflecting the juxtaposition that features so much in the poem? Is it just trying to emphasise that sort of, conflict really between two things? So the structure again reflects what it's trying to illustrate. I suppose the only other thing that I'd mention about the structure is the repetition of, as I made my way down Palestine Street, which starts each stanza. I think it just helps emphasise his movement as he's walking along, just helps us again to imagine that we're there, we're in his shoes, and
I suppose
travelling down.
I suppose it's as well a journey of self-discovery for us as well, because he's taking us on this journey and we're seeing through his eyes what's happening in Palestine Street and the conflict that is occurring and where civilians are made to be in a situation that they didn't create, and they've got to live with it.
I think as well, with the fact that they said it every time, it emphasises that he's still on Palestine Street, showing that it's quite a long road, which might reflect sort of how long this conflict has been going on as well.
Yeah.
My personal response to this poem is about in stanza 3, when the poet comments on the mother of all wars, and that to me suggests that this being the final war, this could be the end all wars, because they've used chemical warfare, and it's a torn society, and the conflict is not getting any better, it's getting worse. So hopefully this should be the final war to stop this conflict, and hopefully there should be some kind of agreement between the two cultures, between the two countries, that bring this chaos to an end.
About the fact that, you know, good and bad do go hand in hand, and the fact that the last stanza is just good, it's the hope that goodness will prevail, with these innocent children as sort of the future, and that to me is sort of the main message. And as you were saying about, you know, the mother of all wars, to end all wars, as we said earlier, the yellow palm is kind of, right, let's shake hands and stop this war now. It's the hope for the future for that.
For me, I just really like the imagery in it. I think it's just so vibrant. I think he's totally successful in convincing us that we're there and put in his shoes. I think it's just so vivid, all of the imagery all the way through it, and the description of it makes the shocking images excuse me, even more shocking. Just these sort of sudden messages at the end of it, I don't know, it really gets to me. I really like that, how vibrant it is. First choice would probably be Belfast Confetti. I think purely from the idea that it's about the impact of conflict on an individual, this idea of somebody to some extent observing but being part of it because they're there, because they're present and seeing what's going on around them. The references to street names and this idea of describing the scene around you. I think those are the points of comparison I make between this and Belfast Confetti.
I would compare it to, look at the Yellow Palm, to At the Board in 1979, because it does mention about a child, and the child's experiences. Again, the child who is lacks knowledge to what's happening in his or her particular society, links to the child At the Board in 1979, where she's not quite sure why she's come back to this particular place and why these adults are so excited. And also as well, where it's got areas where there's a checking point with places where she can't go to, or she has to show her credentials as such, a family, in order to get in a particular place. So it shows the turmoil that's still very evident in this particular country.
I suppose further to that as well, it's, they're both from one person's perspective, and the person doesn't perhaps know everything that they need to know about what's going on in the area. In the Yellow Palm, I mean, he's obviously not from the area, he's sort of discovering these things for the first time and not quite understanding the different contrasts that are going on, and that sort of links to the child's perspective in At the Board in 1979, where she's no idea really why all these things are happening, and it's all done from her perspective as somebody sort of almost on the outside looking in.
Could you also, if you were talking about At the Border, I mean potentially Belfast Confetti as well, explore this idea of a divided society. Belfast Confetti is very much fragmented, which reflects the fragmented society. Yellow Palm is split, this juxtaposition, and At the Border there's lots of references, like the chain. So I think that would be another point of comparison.